to thank everyone for coming out to our work session tonight. Welcome all to the new year. I'm Andy Stack, currently chair of the CA Board of Directors. Remind everyone that this session of the CA Board of Directors is being live streamed. The background and the agenda information for tonight's meeting is available on the CA Board's webpage. I encourage you to follow along with these documents. Remind people to please mute your microphones unless you're actually speaking. Please be courteous to each other. When you do speak, please mute the mics. When you do speak, please state your name so everyone knows who is speaking. Speak clearly and slowly so that everyone can hear you. And for the board members, when you want to ask questions and be recognized, since I can't really see everybody all at once, please use the chat feature. I'll introduce each item on the agenda, and I'm going to start off by calling the roll for the board of directors. Dick?
Here.
Shari?
Here.
Alan? Alan, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Renee? I thought I saw Renee.
She's waving at you, Andy.
She's waving. Okay. Lynn?
Here.
Nancy?
I'm here.
Janet?
Here.
Jenny?
Here.
Milton?
Here.
Andy? So we're all here. Good. Thank you.
You didn't call Jess, but I'm here.
Jess?
Oh, I'm
Jess?
sorry.
Oh.
Jess, I missed you. Sorry. I apologize.
No worries.
Okay. I'd like for someone to make a motion to approve the agenda. You've all seen it.
So moved. Second.
I guess Lynn and then Janet. I mean, Lynn and Jenny. Is there any objection?
I'd like to add something.
Okay.
I'd like to add the management contract.
The management contract.
Just, it's part of the budget, so it falls under this subject.
I'll second that.
All right. I'm gonna put that I guess somewhere after maybe communication strategy.
If it's part of the budget, wouldn't it?
Well, if it's part of the budget, we can talk about it as part of the budget. But if you want a separate, we can talk about it as part of the budget, but if you want a separate item.
Yes, let's do that.
Which Nancy?
Separate item.
All right, let's put it under right after communication strategy. All right. With that change, is there any objection to the agenda? Hearing none, it'll be approved. Okay, we're going on to resident speak out, and we have a number of residents with us tonight. Brian, I guess you're ready. First up is Matthew Schnell, representing the Columbia Aquatics Committee.
Hi, can you hear me, Andrew?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Matthew Schell. I'm the chair of the board of the Columbia Aquatics Association, or I'll refer to it as CAA, and I'm a resident of the village of Dorsey Search. Hi, Dick. So CAA, for those that aren't aware, is the parent board of the Clippers swim team. I'm here today representing the organization, the CAA board, our membership, as well as myself. As a background, I'm a swimmer myself. I swam growing up. I participated in masters swimming through CAA. I've competed in a number of open water swim events and triathlons as a master swimmer. Also a nationally certified official with USA Swimming and volunteers for all the Clippers swim events, as well as the referee for the last several years for Dorsey Dolphins CNSL swim team. If you haven't guessed it, I like swimming. I also do other things. Obviously, my real job, besides the volunteer work that I do supporting and participating in a multitude of CA-related swimming activities. A little bit of background on the CAA. We're a 501c3 that was started in 1974 to foster and promote aquatics activities in the children of Howard County. For those that may not know, the Clippers runs as a unique hybrid between CA and CAA. CA manages the coaches, the practices, and the facilities. CAA handles the events, the organization, the team building, the volunteerism, and many other aspects around the Clippers swim team. CAA also hosts a number of events outside of the Clippers, such as the annual Howard County High School swim meet, and helps in sponsorship of the Clegg Memorial Scholarship and other endeavors. In this special year, the parent board has gone above and beyond, working in conjunction with CA to lead a dialogue of all the COVID-19 related changes, adaptations, and communications with both the county and the team and parents. You know, just as background, if you're not familiar, the Clippers is historically the largest swim team in the state of Maryland. There's approximately 300 families, approximately 350 to 400 swimmers, about 900 visits currently per week to the swim center, even with current restrictions due to the Clippers. Historically, CNSL has been actually much larger than that, about 2,400 participants, pushing about approximately 130,000 outdoor pool visits, and donating thousands of dollars to charity for charity nights run through the CNSL teams, and employing over 40 different coaches to learn valuable life skills coaching the swim teams. As you know, both CNSL and the Clippers does not happen without the community and parent volunteers working together with CA to provide this opportunity for our community. First, I wanted to thank the CA board and the CA staff for their support during the pandemic and the schedule changes to keep our families in one location at the swim center. I appreciate the continued support of the CA board in supporting aquatic activities in Howard County. I believe this extraordinary environment, maintaining the avenue for our stakeholders is critically important. When I think about the CA mission, the CA vision, and the 5 strategic priorities and related goals, aquatics amenities, both the indoor and the outdoor pools, are fundamental to what people think about as the minimum requirements, in addition to our acres of outdoor space, our miles of pathways for running and biking. While many were disappointed in 2020 that the outdoor pools could not open, I'm very optimistic based on the current plan that the CA board will support the opening of at least some of the outdoor pools to allow the return of CNSL this year. It's been critical that the board has maintained the indoor swimming facilities throughout COVID-19. I read a recent survey of athletes showing that nearly 2/3 have reported anxiety and depression since the start of the pandemic. The contemplation of those feelings, including the potential for self-harm, have an inverse relationship to the reports of the decrease in physical activity levels of more than 50%, resulting in the lowest quality of life scores that the researchers have ever found in studies of adolescent athletes. Some may think of Columbia as an aging city, given the historical generation of residents that have had kids and may be moving on. I personally see it differently. I am a millennial. I was not born or raised in Columbia, but I chose to buy a house and move to Columbia specifically for the quality of life items that CA provides. I wanted my 3 kids to attend, who are still in virtual elementary and middle school, to grow up to go to Wild Lake High School. We bought our house with an intentional draw to be able to walk to the Dorsey Search Pool, participate in CNSL, ride our bikes, and run on CA pathways. And I believe that you want to attract people like me, those with young families, and the only way you do it is making sure you continue to support our pools. I don't know of a new family that does not have an item on their list to make sure that their kids can learn how to swim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any questions for Matthew?
Yes, Matt. Nice to finally meet you after emailing. You had sent me a letter recently asking about the running book pool attendance numbers. And I just want you to know that I got an answer to that, and I will be sending that to you shortly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your taking time to come out and talk to us.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Next up on my list is Eric Kuzmal. Hopefully I got your name right. Eric, I think you're here.
Yes, I am here, and it's close enough. It's Kuzmal, but that's fine. You say it like my lifetime friends say it, who've never been able to say it right, so we're good. Uh, for those of you who don't know, I'm Eric Kuzmal. I'm a resident of Wild Lake. I live in the Faulkner Ridge Circle, and I am the newest chair of the Columbia Association Athletic Committee. And tonight I'm here to mostly represent them. Um, uh, we have been talking a lot about pools over the last year with COVID hitting in our committee meetings. And I just want to say that the most recent meeting we had, the members were in full support of the current budget idea of opening of the 15 pools this summer with no snack bars and the non-extended season and all the programming as laid out by the current aquatic staff. We'd certainly obviously love to have all 23 open, but the Aquatics Committee recognizes that there's a need for everybody to do their part during the current situation with COVID-19 and all the challenges it brings. And so, not knowing what the future holds and restrictions that will be on pools and things like that, or other facilities, especially when summer hits, the Aquatics Committee at least wanted you to know that we were really grateful that you would be planning potentially to open up to 15 pools and allow for the kids and the families to get back into the pools come the summer season. My family, all of my children swim. My wife swims. I'm not so much a swimmer, but last summer was tough on our kids and tough on our family. A normal part is the Faulkner Ridge pool of our summer lives, and so anything we can do to open that up. And I know that many members of the Aquatics Committee also involved in a lot of different aquatics things that Columbia offers are all looking forward to having a summer of some semblance of pool life. So we appreciate your time and your consideration and anything you can do to try to approve the current budget for 15 pools.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric, Andy,
Yeah, and can you remember to use the chat tool
Yeah,
to get a chance
I
with
will.
Ginny?
I will. Eric, are you aware that CA staff are looking at seeing if we can get food trucks at the pools?
I have,
You said they're closing the snack bar, but they are trying to get a substitute, which could be actually kind of exciting.
that does sound exciting because I know at Faulkner Ridge we occasionally have the ice cream truck run around and the kids get crazy about that. So I think the food truck sounds like a adult version of the ice cream truck. So anything sounds great. We have a committee meeting coming up, so I'm sure that will come up on our committee meeting on this coming Tuesday night. So, but I had heard that, yes.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have Alex Zaheemian. Alex, I know you were there. Are you still there? Alex, you're on. Alex, you need to unmute. Welcome, Alex.
Hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I've had trouble losing connection. I hope I'm able to stay connected during my comments. So you can hear me?
Yes. Welcome, Alex.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. There was a good discussion of the CA budget at this Tuesday's Oakland Mills Village Board meeting. So I want to share with you the points I covered during that meeting. In my comments tonight, I'll focus on the CA staff proposal to close the 8 outdoor pools this summer. And I'll explain why all of CA's outdoor pools deserve to be reopened. Now, one of the 8 pools is in Talbot Springs. And as you may know, it's a large and very diverse neighborhood. And data has shown that it has the highest population and the highest density of children in all of Oakland Mills. And the Talbot Springs pool serves a neighborhood that has the highest percentage of Blacks and the highest percentage of Hispanic and Latino families in all of Columbia. Imagine the message it sends when theirs is the pool that's closed. And you can understand why people see a reopening of the Talbot Springs pool as a huge matter of social and economic justice. Now, for the CA budget, it's not just a bunch of numbers, obviously. It is a statement of CA's priorities. So CA can afford whatever it chooses to afford. Essentially, it's a matter of choosing how to spend $63 million. Now, through the years, CA has commissioned surveys to ask a broad cross-section of Columbia's residents which CA facilities and services they value and want funded the most. And residents have consistently rated outdoor pools as the sport and fitness facility that should have the highest priority for full funding, even during tough economic times. So it's natural for residents to expect your budget priorities to coincide with the priorities of the residents and to reopen all of the pools.
Alex? Alex, I think you.
He gets disconnected
I think we
periodically.
lost Andy.
Alex was disconnected.
Yeah, that he seems to
All
have
right.
a problem with that.
Okay, let's move on to the next person. We can come back to Alex. I'm not sure when he's gonna get back. Move on to Laura Torres, who is representing the Wild Lake Village Board. Laura, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Welcome to everyone. As Andy said, my name's Laura Torres, and I am the Wild Lake Community Association Board of Directors Vice Chair. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you this evening on behalf of the Wild Lake Village Board. I am not going to talk about pools, although Running Brook Pool is not going to be open. I understand sacrifice and appreciate that any are going to be open. What I am going to talk about is how the ongoing pandemic has affected the charge share. So we know that the pandemic has had a significant impact on the Columbia Association and as well as the Wild Lake Community Association. Like CA, the Wild Lake Community Association faces a tremendous amount of uncertainty as we plan for our fiscal year 2022. At our December 7th meeting, the board discussed the planning for FY22, specifically the importance of having sufficient cash reserves to provide the flexibility to continue to effectively serve the community and ensure ongoing operations in the face of the evolving pandemic situation. The Wild Lake Village Board voted to request that the CA Board waive the cash reserves requirement for FY21 as was done for FY20. To date, the CA Board has not responded to the Wild Lake Village Board's letter that we sent via email on December 14th. Since we sent the letter, we've received more information on the charge share, making our request more urgently important. At the Wild Lake Village Board's most recent meeting this past Monday, January 11th, we discussed the CA FY22 draft budget. The Wild Lake Village Board supports Columbia Association's proposal to establish a reserve fund and create a rainy day fund policy by the end of the fiscal year. Sufficient operating reserves are key to an organization's ability to withstand emergencies. The Wild Lake Board also discussed the proposed FY22 annual charge share. The annual charge share is calculated based on a formula approved by the CA Board in October of 2017. In FY19 and FY20, the amount of Wild Lake's annual charge share was the same as the share calculated in the formula. However, due to the financial emergency created because of the coronavirus pandemic in April 2020, the CA Board approved a reduction in the FY21 village annual charge share, reducing our share by 12%. In the proposed FY22 budget, Wild Lake's share is decreased by 13.9%. To offset the significant reduction of $95,000 in actual and proposed annual charge shares in FY21 and FY22, it is urgently important that the CA Board waive the cash reserves requirement. I urge the CA Board to act on the Wild Lake Village Board's request to amend the current management contract so that no payment shall be required to be made in FY22 for excess cash reserves for FY21. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Laura. Any questions for Laura? No. Thank you, Laura. Next up, we're going to go back to Alex, who's back online now. So Alex, welcome again.
Hi, sorry, but I am losing connection every 2, 3 minutes. But I will continue my comments. As for the pandemic, that's been mentioned, that's not a justifiable excuse to close the pools because those pools are outdoor facilities that are much safer than all of the other sports and fitness indoor facilities that CA staff has asked to keep open. Last summer, other communities outside of Columbia found a safe way to keep their outdoor pools open. CA can learn from their successes and do the same. So in closing, the pandemic has affected the usage of all CA facilities, but
Okay, we'll let Alex continue once he remakes connection. So next up was Harriet Myers. Ms. Miles, are you there at all? Brian, did we hear anything from Harriet?
I have not heard anything from her. I don't remember seeing her join the meeting at any point.
Okay. We'll move on then to Paul Verzinski. Paul has.
Yes, this is Paul Verzinski.
Welcome, Paul.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to address your proposed budget that you've gotten from staff. First of all, on the revenue side, your assessments line item shows an increase of $2 million from last year into fiscal year 22. Assessments have kept CA alive during the pandemic. Suggest that you do not budget an increase for 2 reasons. One, commercial properties are requesting the state to reduce their property taxes. 2, residential property owners may choose to put off payments if jobs have been lost, which is pretty likely in today's environment. On the expenditure side, I agree wholeheartedly with Alex's comments. The pools, all pools should be opened. Second, based on the last meeting of your senior advisory committee, of which I am a member, the SAC recommended continued funding of the senior event shuttle and also the village in Howard. Neither are proposed in the staff budget. Third, you need to include costs of closing the Haven and the lake under expenditures in order to fully recognize what your costs are going to be. I agree with this closing and also question why Fairway Hills is not part of the closing that is being considered. To summarize, this is not a back to basics budget, but a hope budget, and hope is not a plan. You all have a fiduciary responsibility to assessment payers. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Any last questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Oh, Alex, welcome back.
Alex is back.
I don't know what's going on, but I am losing connections every couple of minutes, but I'll finish. I'll finish with my comments. It'll be real short. I left by saying that CA shouldn't be pitting one pool against the other. If you are to respect the residents' priorities, they should all be opened. The pools already made the sacrifice this past summer. So it's really time for you to turn your attention to trimming facilities and services that the residents have valued the least in CA's community-wide surveys. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions?
I'll send you this.
Sure.
Because it got so chopped up by missed connections that I'll just send the whole thing to you.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Did Harriet make it? No, I guess not. All right. That's all I had for the resident speak out sign up. Thank you all for participating tonight. So we will move on to our main topic tonight is the proposed fiscal year 2022 operating capital budget. I'm going to ask Milton if you want to say a few words and have staff introduce the budget.
Yes, what I'd like to do what I'd like to do, if I may, I have a few introductory comments or thoughts I'd like to share with the board and the community. And then followed by, we have a brief slide presentation. And what we're trying to capture in the slide presentation is we basically want to share with the board and the community, how do we get to this draft FY22 budget? And what we're talking about, we included the board parameters that were approved. We looked at our some thoughts we had, and we just want to share with you through those slides how we framed this FY22 budget. And so what as I said, what I'd like to start with is that I have a few thoughts, because this has been a process that I think I've been more involved in this budget process than I have in others, simply because of the times. But anyway, the draft budget for fiscal year FY22 is my 7th budget since coming to CA in 2014. And I assure the board and the community that each of the previous 6 budgets, the attention to the details, the hours spent, the multiple working versions, and the overall effort by the team members was exceptional. However, the draft budget for fiscal year 2022 is a different document. It was generated from an extraordinary effort by team members in response to extraordinary times. Like many others, I'm proudest of my accomplishments professionally and personally that were achieved during some of my most difficult times. Team members at CA, especially my fellow members of the senior leadership team, often have heard me say that as president and CEO, I cannot do my job without them doing their respective jobs. I have high expectations for myself, so I have high expectations for all team members. Looking back to mid-March 2020 and the environment all of us found ourselves attempting daily to navigate in our professional and personal lives, I'm most proud of how, as an organization, we have and will need to, for the foreseeable future, continue to pivot and adapt quickly to circumstances and situations that are generally imposed upon us. Team members have produced for the board and other community stakeholders a draft budget for fiscal year 2022 that's a very solid financial work plan with built-in flexibility, including the ability to accommodate the unknowns and other uncertainties of these times and the foreseeable future. The past 10 months and the foreseeable future, respectively, have and will continue to represent times many of us have never experienced. There is no returning to normal. Starting with this draft budget, CA must focus on moving towards its new and still very important role in the Columbia community and beyond. To CA board members and other community stakeholders, I ask that as we progress through our discussions about this draft budget, that all of us please rely heavily on the data and information in the draft budget, along with the day-to-day operations knowledge and insights of the team members. And one other thing, if I may, before we get to the slides, most of the board members know, and this is on a totally different topic, but related, most of the board members know that we do annual service awards for our team members. But like everything else with the pandemic, and we usually would do that in a December gathering with team members and their respective families. But this year we could not do that. So we have tried to do it through virtual settings this week. But I want to take this opportunity because I want to acknowledge someone who's been very special to me over the past 6.5, roughly 7 years. And that is Janet. Janet has worked with 3 presidents and CEOs, including me. and she's in the process of getting ready to show the ropes to a fourth one. She has worked in CA for 15 years, and I know that from my day one, she has been an invaluable colleague to me. And I know that once the new president and CEO is on, he or she will figure that out very soon. So Janet left the office. I'm from the office, but she told me she will be listening. So I wanted to surprise her. And so everyone, 15 years for Janet, and I hope she has as many more as she chooses to have.
Great, Janet.
Okay, Susan, I think you want to share your share your screen because we have several slides, and we'll move quickly to it because we know we have allocated 90 minutes, but we don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for your attention and your patience. It's been, as Milton said, it's been quite a time, quite a season, and we're not anywhere near through it yet. So now's not the time to give up. I know we're all quite weary, but we need to just continue to press on. So just a few things. I won't take a lot of time. As Milton said, we wanted to just kind of level the playing field a little bit. So hopefully you can see my slide. It just reminds us that back in September, after a couple meetings of deliberation and reviewing information, the board approved the budget guidelines, including the capital budget amount of $8 million, a targeted budgeted increase in net assets, annual charge rate and cap, the new reserve fund that one of the resident speakers mentioned, and some membership rate guidance. We also had a lot of opportunity to gather input. So in mid-July, we sent out letters to the village managers, to the advisory committees, to the board, soliciting input for this draft budget deliberation or generation. The board discussed and approved the schedule. Then in September, the parameters of the guidelines. There were 2 work sessions in October, one digging into detailed financial data or budget data, and the other on proposed major capital projects that had come out of the input that was gathered and the facility assessments. And then in November, mid-November, our one meeting in November, the board voted on those, just whether those proposed major capital projects should be included in the budget. There were no proposed new operating initiatives. So I'm sorry. We also, I had the strategic plan always in the forefront. It was out on my desk. I referred to it frequently. And Milton, I don't know if you had mentioned wanting to give some comments on the strategic plan.
Yes, what I wanted to say about the strategic plan is that all the board members know, regardless of the sector, that the industry sector that the organization in, regardless of whether you have unlimited financial resources or limited financial resources like we do, most organizations work from a plan. And the board approved our strategic plan in September 2019 after many months of going through exercises, working with the facilitator, and tremendous amount of input from the community. And it was a project that the board and senior staff worked on shoulder to shoulder. So as we went into this budget, drafting this draft budget, this is particularly an important tool for us as we put together the draft budget. Because as I said, I know that the community wants to know what is the framework. And this is our strategic plan with its priorities and related goals are one of the key tools we use to get the budget together. And as you go through the budget and as we go through our deliberations and our discussions, you're going to see that the components of the strategic plan, especially the priorities, reflected throughout that budget, and how we are allocating our financial and our human resources over at least over the next 12 months and going forward. So please continue, Susan.
Okay. All right, thanks. So we also, to distill it down into one kind of overarching goal, or what's the big idea that organizations often talk about. The goal was to serve as many community stakeholders as possible with as diverse an array of services and programs as possible within our financial constraints. So Milton,
yeah, and once again, going back to our strategic plan, if you look at our mission statement, it talks about engaging our diverse community, and our vision statement, it talks about our inclusive community. And so all of you know, I'm telling you what you know, is that we have a lot of diverse stakeholders in this community, and we have limited resources before the pandemic and especially now, but we still feel somewhat of an obligation to do what we can for as a broader audience as possible with those resources. And this overarching goal was, once again, a major part of how we put together and how we framed this draft budget.
Thank you. So you have seen this slide before in the materials that in our blog posts and other materials, but just to give you the picture again of where we think we're going to be for FY22. You see the original FY21 budget approved 2 weeks before, about 2 weeks before the mandated shutdown, had total income of almost $80 million, 30 of that being sport and fitness, and 44 million being annual charge revenue. So we revised the next column's FY21 budget. Then as we always do each quarter, we project where we think we're going to be at the end of the fiscal year. That's the estimated 21 budget. That's a total now of $55 million. And as you can see, the biggest component is still obviously the annual charge, but it shows again the impact of the pandemic on the community services in particular, and on sport and fitness. And then the proposed FY22 budget, total income of a little under $64 million. We expect at this point 42 million of that in the annual charge, about 18 in sport and fitness, and about $2 million in community services. So the FY22 budget proposed draft revenue is about 16% greater than where we think we'll be at the end of the fiscal year. So we're moving in the right direction, but very, very slowly. So I don't know how much you're paying attention or interested in the kind of broader economic news or projections, but economists have generally slashed, is the word I've seen, their projections for economic growth through March of 2021 through the first calendar quarter. But they have beefed up their projections for the later in the calendar year. So we've attempted to pay attention to that. There's a lot of assumptions in here.
Susan, if I make one quick point, one of the things I emphasize to our team leaders as we put together the budget, along the lines what Susan was talking about, the economy is projecting later in the calendar year, things ticking up. But what we have to keep in mind, December of the calendar year is 8 months into our fiscal year. And so I'm hoping, and everything else, that things will tick up near the end of the calendar year, but we have to keep in mind that's 8 months into our fiscal year.
Right. And we're still in a recession. We're still in an economic recession. We expect ongoing capacity restrictions and event restrictions well into the fiscal year, well into the calendar year for sure. And then there's the complete unknown of what's going to be the persistent impact of the virus on human behavior. when will people be comfortable being in crowds or groups, even when restrictions are limited, and those we don't know. So we attempted to factor in those things in as a relatively conservative way. So key budget assumptions, as you already know, we project no long-term debt issuance in FY22. We included the proposal for 15 pools opening and for CNSL. We proposed the closure of Haven on the Lake. We have, given that we also expect much of the headquarters and sort of back office and support functions to still be working remotely, and with all of the cyber security issues around the globe, we have a continued investment in cybersecurity and also in digital media to communicate with our residents and community where they are through digital means. And then the total proposed financial support of the village community associations is 6.1 million, of which 3.2 million is the annual charge share and employee benefits costs. So there are many other assumptions in the budget. We this year, with Milton's directive and leadership, we expanded greatly the transmittal letter to be an executive summary and to include these factors in more detail and others. And so I hope that was helpful. And going forward, there's a lot of opportunity for community members, those of you who are watching, and anyone who's going to watch or has been following our blogs and all of the great work Danica's been doing. 5 more opportunities for budget input in person or in virtual person, and always people can reach us through email or other means. And those are some of the other means. So that's all I had for you tonight as far as presentation, and I'll just turn it over to Andy then.
All done, Milton?
Yes.
Okay. As I said, I'd like to go around and give each board member an opportunity. And before we open up for the general questions, so Dick, you're up first.
Okay. I looked it over and there's a lot of stuff there. So it looked pretty good to me. The one place that I was spending some time was trying to figure out the Haven situation. And let me just say, I've never been a friend of the Haven, but I'm just looking at it in terms of strictly budgetary considerations. We right now are sinking in unavoidable costs over $1.5 million a year into that place in terms of rent, depreciation, insurance, expenses that just aren't going to go away. And if we shut the place down, the only thing we're saving, it seems to me, and this is just from a rough view here, is the labor expenses and some supplies and things like that. So are we really saving any money by shutting it down? And do we have an escape hatch? I mean, do we have somebody coming along who wants to sublet the place? Are there other uses we can put to it? Is there a way we can get Hughes to cut the rent? I mean, is there anything else going on that would justify just carrying for the next, 5 years, $1 million+ a year in expenses with absolutely nothing in terms of membership fees or any other things to cover our costs there? And I sent you an email to this effect. I don't know if you've had time really to analyze the numbers, but that's a concern of mine.
Yeah, we got your email. I think it was sent fairly late last night, and I just acknowledged that, and we're working on it. So
that's when I do my best work. Okay.
All right.
But
So
but
we will
anyway,
get
is there anything positive that could come from all this? I see
So,
Milton's waving his.
yeah, go ahead, Milton. I don't know what you, go ahead.
Well, Dick and rest of the board members, we're going to respond to it based on the question you inquired, because we have to do some more research. But part of your question you posed, Dick, is that is no longer, I don't need the confidentiality anymore, but we are working with a commercial broker to look at options for that space. I've had at least 2 conversations with Greg Fitchett at Howard Hughes Corporation. I let him know that we were going to be taking this proposal to the board, and I will emphasize it's still a proposal. But one of the things Greg said to me that I really liked, he said, Milton, I understand the circumstance, and because we've had it with other tenants, that location, we don't want it to stay dark for very long. So we're willing to work very closely with CA. And that's what, there's nothing signed, there's no guarantees, but those are some of the options that we're going to explore.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad you're looking into it. Just one other comment. I agree with the comments we heard earlier about the Talbot pool. It is a low-income area, and we should perhaps give some thought to that as a factor, even though it doesn't get a whole lot of use. Maybe there are ways we can increase the usage, but I would like to take another look at that particular pool.
And also, I have some personal comments about that, but I'll wait for our response to them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is Janet, and I'm going to try to keep you guys to 3 minutes so we get everybody a chance. Janet?
Yes, thank you.
My name
Okay,
is on the list.
first of all, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Janet, yes.
Okay. Susan, I did appreciate the content of the transmission letter. It was very thorough, and it was a big help. 2, I wanted to second the comment on Fairway Hills. I'm not sure if COVID has drastically turned around the financials at Fairway Hills, but I think that is certainly something that we should be looking into in terms of its operating versus revenue. And, I know there had been some proposals for potentially making it a 9-hole course, et cetera. So I think there are opportunities there that I'm not seeing reflected here. As far as Talbot Springs Pool, I lived in that area. While I love that pool, the main reason I loved it is because I got it to myself every time I went. And so I really don't think that keeping a pool open where literally they have 5 people a day is beneficial. However, if we want to talk about that area, I would like to bring up the teen center and indicate that I am strongly opposed to a monthly fee for the teen center, as at the time a single mother who was sending her daughter to the teen center, I was so very grateful for that asset. And I believe that the vast majority of the kids that take advantage of the teen center, $25 a month would matter to them. And I can say that as, someone who has partaken, who, again, it was a while ago now, so I don't know what the status of it is at this point, but it was, a safe place for my middle school age daughter to go hang out with other kids, have fun, learn responsibility. The staff there is phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about it, but I really think that you would be hurting the most, the community members that benefit most by charging a $25 fee. Perhaps a smaller fee, but I would really like to encourage us to try to find sponsors for extra activities or outings or guest speakers and that kind of thing. Potentially benefit from volunteers, including things like local NHS chapters that need service hours. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, that could perhaps reduce our costs, but not make the students that are participating in that incur the costs. So if we're gonna talk about opening another pool, I'd rather see that cost go to something like the teen center that is really, a an asset for potentially at-risk students, for a lot of kids that maybe have nowhere else to go after school. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Okay, Nancy's next.
I wrote this out. I was, as you noticed, when I sent my emails, I was very upset to hear, not from the board, but from a blog, that the Haven was going to, and I know all about we have to vote, but I do know that once it's out in the public, people see it as a done thing, the way it was, especially the way it was publicized. And I think that, well, let me just read what I wrote. There are a number of issues right now with the Haven. First of all, we don't have an abatement of the rent, which is $1 million a year. And we do have costs like salaries and necessities that they use, but it is no longer an exclusive club, as some people still think of it. And I really blame Columbia Association, the way they haven't marketed it and the way they never really built it into a healing place rather than this exclusive place. It is no more beautiful than the athletic club, for example. And it's not fancier, trust me. But I think that we're making a serious mistake by looking at the short term rather than the long term. In a very short time, there are going to be some very expensive condo buildings built right there in the parking lot of the Haven and right upstairs in front of the Whole Foods. And I think it's a real mistake for us to suddenly decide this is the time we have to close it, just as COVID is finally going to be gotten rid of with the vaccine, and it's going to be safer for people to come together. The timing of this, I think we've spent so many millions of dollars on this only to give it all away. Small yoga and Pilates studios have closed permanently. Buildings about to be built near Kittamuqundi, which I just mentioned. Lots of corporate rental space is available since COVID. New marketing team can only improve the marketing of the Haven when many people have no idea where it is, that it is. Even people who work at Whole Foods or shop there don't even know about the Haven. And there's nobody but CA to blame for that. Community aspect is now taking hold. People are forming small groups, becoming much more friendly. It had been thought that we would add equipment. That was the last thing we talked about a year or so ago. That never happened. Make it a gathering spot where people would be able to plug in their laptops. People would be able to sit and have coffee and make it a community spot for people to meet. That didn't happen. No machines were discussed ever arrived. Nothing was ever done to get people into the Haven, except for what the team at Haven were able to do on their own. It has never been properly marketed as a mind, body, health, and wellness center, and it took time to recover from the loss of the former spa that didn't work out. People still think of it as an exclusive club because of the initial marketing that never was developed beyond that. The way it is set aside as separate and not included with fit and play, for example, has also hurt it. It has been played essentially as a totally separate thing, and I think that is also a major mistake. When it was doing poorly for the past years, the prices still went up. Sorry, but I don't understand that. I've owned my own business, and I've learned how to best manage the marketing and the promotions that are critical to have a successful business. Haven was never really promoted as part of CA as much as a special place that you have to pay over and above to use it. Frankly, to grow a business, that makes no sense. It only enhances the elitist reputation Haven is trying to lose. We would lose our only location in downtown, so downtown will be given over to HHC, or whomever fills that gap. This is our city. We provide great amenities that our residents love. But are we really going to walk away before it's been given an adequate chance? New businesses, new residences, COVID gone, it will bounce back. It'll take time, but it will come. It's a terrible loss for those who work there and who use the Haven, but also for the future residents who would only gain from having it here. Thank you.
Andy, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thanks, Nancy. Renee, you're up next. Renee?
It says Renee has left the meeting.
Right.
And returned.
And
there's Renee.
yeah, I keep getting frozen out. Sorry. Okay, so I'd like to go to the proposed summary of cash flows and make sure I understand it, please. I'm not sure where are we going to show a one-time loss from closing the Haven is my first question.
Sorry, I was on mute. It depends on what period it would be closing in. So we would have a one-time loss, most likely.
And about $4,500 or $44.5 million was the number I heard in the fall at close.
Yeah, we'll get that for you, but I don't believe it's that high.
Renee, you're on mute.
She's frozen.
She said she was getting frozen on and off, so maybe that's it. Oh.
Renee, you're on mute. Okay, we'll come back to Renee. Shari?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would like to just piggyback a little bit on what Dick and Nancy have said so far about Haven. I think we need to be very careful about how we treat this last a place of CA presence in downtown. I think that is still very, very significant. And in terms of looking at Haven from a business perspective, I agree that Haven could be refigured in terms of the space that's there. A number of us went and met Dan, I think it was last year, and we walked through the entire place. There are all kinds of possibilities for using that big interior space, which is now pretty much empty. Not the pool area, but the place where the desk is. The original idea of having tables there, the idea of having a co-working space in downtown that people might be able to be part of. The idea of perhaps making it available to businesses, particularly small businesses that don't have space to meet with their staff, do an offsite, having some sort of space that they could be in to make a day of it could be very attractive. I think we have to regenerate and be creative in terms of our thinking about this before we throw in the towel. So that's just one idea. I think Fairway Hills has to be looked at again. What we're seeing long-term in terms of membership and in terms of, as Susan said, what the behavioral implications are going to be as we come through this COVID period will be very important in terms of what the overall membership possibilities are for us and what those different age groups might be. So I'm looking at, is CA perhaps at this point overextended in terms of the number of fitness centers, overextended in terms of the number of golf courses, and where are we actually getting the biggest bang for the buck? I understand that CA as a nonprofit, we don't produce anything, but what we do is we create experiences for people. And that experiential aspect of it is becoming more and more important for younger people, for the younger cohorts, the folks that are moving into Columbia. So we may have to revise and reimagine our business model in terms of what we're presenting. The one question I had from the initial transmittal letter, Milton, it says here that we're down to about 655 in staff, but that takes up 43% of our operating expenses.
Shari, if I may, no, the 655 team members was as of the end of December. The FY22 budget projects that personnel-related costs will be 43%.
43%. Okay, and that's all coming out of operating, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be 57% for services and programs. What is the total amount in the FY22 budget for operating expenses?
63,518.
Okay,
Now,
and does that?
I'm sorry, that includes the personnel costs and $13,250,000 of depreciation as well. So.
Yes.
Okay, and is that, Susan, is that both salaries in terms of wages, retirement, and bonuses?
It's all, I'm not sure I understand. What is what? Sorry.
When you say 43% of operating expenses.
Right.
For staff, does that include salary, retirement, and bonuses?
It includes salaries, over 22 million, performance incentives of 35,000. It's almost $1.8 million of payroll taxes, and $3.1 million of benefits that includes insurances, including I think all the insurances and the 401k contribution. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
And I would
Sharon.
like to could I just attempt to clarify something? So what Milton was pointing out, so Sherry, you noted that 43% of this $63,500,000 is personnel costs. But that's for the staff that's projected to be needed to generate, this income of 63 million, not what right now we have about 655 people, but then we'll be adding, we'd be needing to add lifeguards, et cetera. So that number goes up in FY22.
Okay, so that really doesn't include the staffing for the pools?
The dollars do, but the 655 people you're talking about is the December 2020 amount of people.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Lynn, you're next.
Okay, just quickly, two things. At our village board meeting last night in Town Center, of course, we did talk about the pools and the budget. We were wondering, was it taken into consideration when Wild Lake was left with one pool that it's not just Wild Lake, it's Wild Lake and Town Center. And we're growing. Basically, I think the pool that Town Center thinks of using more is Running Brook. It's larger, it's closer, kids can bike there, walk there. I didn't know how that we were just curious about how that decision was made. Was it made thinking of the population of Town Center as well as Wild Lake when you got the two villages down to one pool?
Susan, if I saw I know that Marty is out there someplace. So Marty.
Hey, I can answer that. Yeah. So we looked at every single village, and what ended up happening is we came down to between Running Brook and Hobbit's Glen, and River Hill has two swim teams that practice out of River Hill. And it basically came down a distance of travel is those two teams practice out of Hobbit's Glen, and making them, if we didn't open Hobbit's Glen, we'd be making them travel all the way to Running Brook the entire summer for those swim teams. So that's why we picked Hobbit's Glen.
Okay, but again, 2 villages for 1 pool, and Faulkner Ridge is not that, you know, it's a fine basic pool, but you know, not a lot of parking, not a lot of, you know, it's too far for most kids to certainly to walk, and bicycles maybe. Anyway, we questioned that because it is one pool for 2 villages. The other comment I wanted to make about the Haven, I know people have referenced it as, you know, CA has no presence downtown. Let's keep the Haven as our presence. I think that CA there will be within the next, you know, couple of years, other possibilities for a good CA presence downtown. It doesn't have to be keeping the Haven open as sort of the meeting place or the symbol of CA downtown. I think we can look at other options for that, you know, as we get into things more. The Haven stand on its own, I think, as a facility, or, you know, as a change facility if we're going to consider keeping it open.
Thanks, Lynn. Jess, you're up next.
Yeah, I sent all my questions in advance, so I don't really have any questions this evening. You know, I have a feeling that we will be discussing this plenty, and I'll have plenty of opportunity to ask more detailed questions as we get into the nitty-gritty. So you can just go on to the next person.
All right, thanks, Jess. Alan?
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure we all remember that Symphony Woods is downtown. So we have a pretty major presence downtown. I'm, you know, even without the Haven, also could be options for various other kinds of presences that we don't think about now.
Right.
As we think about how to integrate ourselves to the downtown. The teen center idea I liked, Janet's idea of that, so I just wanted to weigh in on that. Couple of questions. You showed a graph early on of 4 bars of where we're getting our income from, and it looked like annual charge was projected. There was somewhere actual, somewhere estimated. It was pretty flat, and yet we imposed a reduction on the villages of 8 and whatever %, and more reduction this year, based, I'm assuming, on the fact that our annual charge revenue was down or expected to be down. So could you help me understand that, please?
So what we have for the village's annual charge share is an actual slight increase over what the 21 amount is. So it isn't a reduction, and what we did was follow the formula. That was, as was previously noted by, I think, the Wild Lake Village chair, that was established in September, or established in 2017 for the 2019 budget. So we tried to look at what the impact of the pandemic is on activities and gatherings and events, and as we've done with CA's expenses, and worked to develop what we're proposing for the annual charge share this year. So that's where that came from.
And
so 4 bars showed, they were, I guess, now that I think about it, they were all sort of during and post-COVID, not pre-COVID. So there may be, what would that, if you had projected, I don't need an exact number, but if you had added 1 more year to the left, you know, previous year, would that blue bar representing our assessment income have been higher?
I don't know, Alan. I'd have to pull it up and look.
You don't know if our assessment income's been down from fiscal year 20 to 21?
No, yeah, it was not down from 20 to 21. Oh, I'm sorry, it is. It is down from 20 to 21. Right, that's what we
Okay.
budgeted a lower amount in 21, right?
I just wanted to make sure of that. Second thing, and I put this in the chat as well, you listed a bunch of assumptions, several, I don't mean to put them down by calling them a bunch, you listed several assumptions, but two of them were opening 15 pools and closing Haven. Those aren't assumptions. Those are tactics, strategies, whatever you want to call them, based on assumptions. What were the assumptions that led you to the conclusions that 15 pools was the right number and that closing Haven was an answer?
Well, go ahead. Did you want to say something, Milton?
Well, I'll start, Alan, by responding to the first part of about the 15 pools. Given the fact that we found ourselves with no outdoor pool season in 2021, going into the draft budget for 2022, I wanted to make sure we were in a position to have an outdoor pool season, understanding that, and the way I was looking at it is that if we commit to an aquatic season, knowing that the season starts the first month of our fiscal year, we're basically have committed ourselves to those financial commitments, personnel related costs, the improvements to the facilities. And so I wanted to make sure we were putting together a budget that reflected an outdoor aquatic season, knowing still that we're subject to any restriction from the pandemic. But also I wanted to make sure that the financial commitment we were committing to, given that it would happen so early in our fiscal year, we could manage it. And 15 was a number that we looked at, and I talked to the staff, especially related to the making sure that we could accommodate the Columbia Swim League. Okay, thank you. So that what I'm hearing in that is sort of two assumptions. One is that the community was going to, if you will, require us to have that's not a negative thing for me, that we needed to have a pool season, and we wanted to accommodate swim teams. Those sound like assumptions to me. How about the closing of the Haven?
So the closing of the Haven was proposed to save the financial resources, and knowing that the Haven had been struggling, I think it was well described in the budget and on that page. We were looking at a partner to come and use some of that space. They're no longer interested because of the pandemic. It's changed their operations and model. And Dan could probably do a much better job of explaining this than I do. But there were a number of factors that were in that.
Yeah, ultimately, Susan, it would go back to, if we think about, Nancy referenced the putting of the equipment and everything. We had a meeting just before COVID where we were given approval to start spending the $1 million that had been put aside. And at that time, we were directed that this thing had to make money. We had to go forward. As a matter of fact, we had a very long conversation about all the reporting that I was going to be required to do, because the expectation was going to be making money. And at this point, given the runway that's left in the lease, given the fact that the partnership with Exhale, even though they would still partner with us, I've had conversations with them. We don't have the resources, financial resources, to put the equipment in, to build out the spa space, make those changes. I mean, that's another $1 million of capital when we already have a very tight capital budget. So really, we looked at it and said, well, at the end of the lease, what is going to happen? We're not going to be, there's no way. And I think at one point, Alan, you asked me when I gave you numbers, you asked, how could I trust you? And, that was my best work at the time, working with the information we have with the partners. And right now I'm saying, I am telling you, given where we're at now, I could not make Haven profitable by the end of the lease. So then the question is, do we continue to run it out? And then what's going to happen when the lease renewal comes up and we're not profitable. Are we going to renew? Or are we going to have the same conversation then? And then we look at nearly $500,000, which is the operating savings that we're going to have. When we're talking about all the other things that we have challenges funding, do we have $500,000 to spare for something that I cannot sit here and tell you? Previously, the plan we had working with Exhale, I was pretty confident of where we're going to end up. Right now, sitting here, I have zero confidence that we could be profitable by the end of the lease.
Thank you, Dan. That was very, very helpful. So I also understand that Haven is, as rental space for us, is in a sort of a unique position among our other facilities. So it sort of had to be looked at by itself. So thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Ginny, you're up next.
Thanks, Andy. A lot's been said already that I agree with or disagree, and also a lot needs to be still worked on in order to get the public and us answers. But there's just one area that I'm concerned about, and that is when we have a meeting like the virtual town hall meeting, and you all will be doing a presentation. Is there any way, and I know I've asked for this before, but is there any way of doing one of your slides, I assume you're going to do a slideshow, that would show very simply what the revenue is and where it's coming from, residential, business? Because most people, when they say annual charge, I've been hearing this a lot, they think it's simply residential. They have no concept that you're actually getting money from the business community. And other revenue that you're getting, and just, that up there. Then the expenses being fixed expenses that you absolutely have to do. So not the sports and fitness or other things, but things like the $3 million that you're required to do for the the finance investment firm, the $2 million reserve that we voted on, rent, utilities, things that you absolutely must pay. If that makes any sense. And then what is the difference? What's left for all these other things is what the public has to see. So instead of a $63 million budget, in fact, we only have, and I'll just make this up, 40 million to spend, or less even, maybe less. So I think that would at least help deal with a little reality here. It's not a $63 million budget that you can actually make decisions on and decide what programs and services. It's only a $43 million budget or something, if that makes sense. The other thing is the $61 million that Howard County's surplus, and there's state open space money and federal grants. I know I keep harping on this, but what I would love to see is a list of the projects and services that we have cut. Make it clear to the public we have cut, like the senior shuttle at, I think it was 54,000, I'm not sure. The volunteer center, whatever that's saving. Teen center, putting in the monthly fee, things like that, so that we can show these are the programs that are being cut. And what are our options there? Are we trying to get some money from the state and the county or open space, feds, et cetera, to help us fund those programs? I know I keep harping on that, but I don't think we can continue to do a lot. I don't think we even should think about doing a lot on our own, even if we had the money. It's time that the county started contributing to some of these. The subsidy that we give to people, which is close to $1 million, so that they can use our facilities. Yet what is happening with Parks and Rec for people that are low income? Do they subsidize? Does the county subsidize them? And, equity issue. I see a lot of this as an equity issue for people in Columbia that are paying twice. So I think I would just like to see that. A lot of the other questions you've asked, I also want answers on the Haven. Haven with Howard Hughes, I guess I'd really like to know why they didn't give us a break in the rent when we were closed. I heard they're giving a restaurant that's going to locate down at the lakefront a break in rent. I don't know if that's true. Somebody just sent that to me. Any chance of partnerships? You guys have been doing, actually, Dan, a very good job. My understanding is getting partnerships with MedStar and other companies with the Haven to try and add to the revenue and also attract business. But I just want to hear more about what exactly we've looked at and what any potential is for a location downtown, for Columbia Association.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Let's go back to Renee.
Well, Andy, I'm sorry, there were just a few others. This volunteer center was another one. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Renee, you back with us?
She's having a problem.
She must have the same connection that Alex had.
I could suggest, Renee, if you look on the invitation, just call the phone number.
Okay. We'll let Renee. No, unfortunately, Renee, don't hear you. All right, well, we'll see if we can get Renee
background. Is that you, Jenny?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right. Renee, anything? No. All right, let's I'll open it up. I know Nancy, you had a question, and then if everybody could use the chat room now, so I can see who wants to talk. Nancy, you had.
Yeah, I had a couple things I wanted to say. I understand that fighting for the Haven is like a very uphill battle, but I'm still going to fight for it because I believe that it has a lot of merit. And Dan, I think you're terrific. I think you've done a wonderful job. I really do. But I really think you're making a giant assumption that you could never make Haven successful or profitable, if that's the word, before the lease runs out. I don't believe that our goal in what we do is supposed to be about making a profit so much as having things pay for themselves, which is basically very similar, not the same thing. But I don't think a lot of what we're doing right now is profitable, frankly. And I think that what we have to realize is that it hasn't been working for a reason, and I think we need to turn around how we look at it and how we need to make changes, whatever they are. I'm not going to dictate those. That's up to the smart people to figure out. But I do think it's very doable. And I think that things are going to get back to some kind of normalcy, and we shouldn't just flush it down the drain. That would be flushing away millions of dollars, and we're still going to be paying unless we get a tenant in there or unless we get Howard Hughes to give us an abatement for $1 million a year. I don't see where it makes any sense to walk away and still have to pay $1 million a year.
Okay, I think Dan wants to reply.
Go right ahead.
Yeah,
Dan?
I agree with you 100%, except for the making it profitable by the end of the lease. You know, any of these decisions that were made were extremely difficult. There was no easy decision. I'm a big believer in Haven. I was telling Susie the other day, I've written more memos about Haven, hot dogs at Hobbit's Glen, and membership than everything else combined. And a lot of you have been here since I've been here. I've passionately defended Haven since day one because I believe in the concept. I see it working other places. I think it's a great concept. I think the timing was bad. I think we're a couple years too early. And then there's memos I've written about all the other things I think we did wrong, because I agree we did a lot of things wrong. But where I don't agree is I find it very challenging, especially given we don't have the capital money to reinvest, and we won't have it for a couple years, that I can make it profitable because the rent is so big. And so then it becomes about that differential and how impactful is that $500,000 roughly, that if we get it sublet grows. So that's really what it became about. I'm a believer in Haven. I'm a believer in everything we do. As Milton and I were talking today. So none of these were easy decisions. And especially when I had to look the staff in the eyes and tell them what we were doing or thinking about doing, I guess is the right word. It's very difficult across the board, but I think I don't see by the end of the lease, and I would have a hard time if I was sitting on the board after 10 years, 11 years, if it wasn't profitable, signing another long-term lease where the rent goes up. And really, that's a major factor.
Can I interrupt here?
Yep.
At the end of the lease, then at least we can evaluate. But for us, until we get to the end of the lease, we still have $1 million a year bill for nothing. So that to me just kills me. It makes
it kills all of us.
Absolutely no sense.
It kills all of us. But again, it's the $500,000 differential, and where it can go to do other things that really, that's what we're looking at here.
Okay, Renee, are you back with us? Renee, are you back with us? You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. I've logged in about 28 times now. Okay, so I want to go back to the statement of cash flow summaries.
Do you know which page it is?
So we're going to show a one-time loss on the Haven of about $4.5 million. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe it's that. I don't believe it's that much money.
All right. I'm sorry, I didn't hear a thing. My screen is freezing.
Yeah, we're working through the list of assets that are on their books, but we'll get there. I'll give you the one-time write-off as soon as we have it.
Okay, so that number is not included in the summary cash flow. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so.
But it wouldn't be a cash. It wouldn't be a cash. It's a non-cash transaction, right?
Well, you're going to pay $1 million out next year for rent. Is that correct?
That's in here.
The $1 million that's what I'm trying to find. So the $1 million is in here, but
correct.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I'm just trying to understand what's going on. All right. And then, so are we going to contribute anything to the new cash reserve account?
Yes. That's the, yeah, that's the three. Yeah, that's the plan. So this is not showing that level of detail. Right. Yes.
Okay, so so on the FY
cash flow statement.
That's where I am. Summary of cash flows under sources and uses of cash. So are you putting it in a different statement?
We're showing it as an increase in the cash balance. So,
okay. So, can you just tell me what page you're on then?
Well, if you want it, the detailed cash flow statement is near the back. And that would be page 171 in the book. It shows the increase in the cash balance. So, and that increase includes the reserve.
So it's not an expense item, is what you're saying. It's just an increase in the reserves.
Correct.
So it wouldn't show up as an expense.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Lynn, did you want to add some comment on that? I see you came off of mute.
Yes, if you can hear me, I wanted to point out on page 6 on the summary of cash flows, we actually have the 3 million in the FY21 estimate column.
Right.
At the bottom,
right.
It's the general cash reserve, $3 million. Is that what you're referring to, Renee?
No, well, I see that, but my question is about FY22. Are we going to be putting money into, where's the rainy day fund in FY21 and 22? What I'm concerned about is, are we borrowing to put that money into that cash reserve account?
The answer is no, this 3 million, and the FY22 budget at this point in time doesn't anticipate more of a buildup of the reserve.
So you're not going to contribute, so you're saying that the $3 million rainy day fund is all you want to put in there?
As of 21 and 22, yes.
Well, everyone, the initial amount of the cash reserve account is only $2 million, isn't it, Susan? I think we're blending two things. Renee is talking about the $3 million from the that we have to do with our with the bank, but the $2 million is a new cash reserve account that we're setting up.
Right. Right. I'm talking about both. So
okay.
So my question is, I see the $3 million from FY21, and so what I'm understanding is that for FY22, we are going to not put any more money in a rainy day fund, that we're going to basically have just a $3 million rainy day fund. And that's where we're going to leave it. That's my question.
No,
So
the plan is to build a cash reserve. I'm getting a lot of echoes. I'm sorry.
Renee?
Yes.
Okay, and I may need some help with this. The rainy day fund, that a cash reserve that CA has recommended, that's not starting until FY22.
That's correct. So, okay. All right. I'm concerned about the financial structure of CA.
Yes.
Okay. And my question is, if I look at the sources and uses, I get down to a cash addition of about $800,000. Okay. I was under the impression, and obviously it wasn't the correct impression, that we were not going, I was under the impression we were going to make an additional contribution to the rainy day fund. And I'm being told that that's not true. So I am misunderstanding that. That's all.
Okay, once again, I may need help with this. We are not starting the rainy day fund. The initial cash amount that we're putting in the rainy day fund will be in FY22 in the amount of $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a separate, I guess, a reserve, right, Susan, that we have to keep based on our new arrangement with the bank, and that's ongoing every year, right?
Right.
And
right.
that's $3 million.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it may be that we have not shown that separately. We may need to look at the presentation.
In the back of the book, on page 171.
No, to correct the presentation on page 6. We'll look at that.
Okay, and so then my next question is that there were supposed to be, I thought, again, I could be very much mistaken here, that there were supposed to be repayments back to the trust account for an insurance.
Right, so we're doing the $1 million of that this year in FY21.
How about next year? So we took out 3 million, is that correct?
We did.
And, okay, so we're going to pay back $1 million this year. And where is that on the FY21 estimate for use of cash? Or are you not considering it a use of cash?
It's on the investment line, the net sales purchases of investments, because the trustee invests that money.
That's fine.
So if you look on page 6, that's where it is.
Okay, and so is that $2 million for FY22, the remainder of that money?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I want to know, that it's going to be repaid.
Renee?
Yes.
If I may, FY21, we don't start the repayment to the trust fund. We start the repayment to the trust fund in FY22.
Right, May 21 was the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
I made a mistake.
Okay, so is this number not right then?
I would have to say that I made an error then, because I do have it in 21, yes.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I thought that was what we had planned, Milton. Yeah, I'm sorry, Renee. I apologize.
Okay, if that's the plan,
Yeah, we planned $1 million at the end of this year going back, and then we'll evaluate it with the actuary. The actuarial report said we didn't have to pay back any, but we're putting $1 million in this year, and then we'll get that report in May again and see what he recommends.
so we are putting in $1 million in FY21.
Right.
Okay.
And then as of today, subject to change, subject to votes, you're estimating that you may put another $2 million in FY22. Is that correct? Is that what that line is?
Yeah, no, I didn't anticipate that. That $2 million to me is our cash reserve. We're not at this point.
Okay, but is that held by a trustee?
Say that again, I'm sorry. You're breaking,
That line says
you're
that it's
breaking up a
investment.
little.
If that line says that it's an investment held by a trustee.
Yeah, I think we need to change our presentation. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so then can we talk about, I know you used to do a 10-year projection, and that's an impossible task today. But what are you thinking? If I looked at the economic downturn in 2008, which actually happened in FY 2009, it took us 3 years to recuperate with a much less reduction in economic turmoil. What are you estimating the amount of time it's going to take for Columbia Association to return to some prior level prior to COVID? Are you thinking it's a 2-year, 3-year process, or something longer?
So what measure? What are you using to measure that?
I went back to the 2008, 2009 financial statements. And I looked at what we had in 2008, which ended on April 30th, and then assumed that the actual economic downturn happened in FY 2009, because that's pretty close to when it happened during the elections of 2008. And then I took 2 to 3 additional years to get just the sports and fitness. I only looked at sports and fitness back to the FY 2008 figure. So my question is, what are you thinking is going to be the ability of CA to get back to the prior to COVID situation as far as revenue?
So I would like to look at those 2008, 2009 numbers, because my comprehension was that it was not that dramatic of a change, but
it wasn't. That right. It was a 10% drop in revenue for sports and fitness. And that's my question, that we lost about between, depending upon how you calculate it, I just kind of lumped the different categories for sports and fitness together. It was just under a 10% drop. But here we have a more substantial drop. So the question is, what do you think, what are you guesstimating, not estimating, but even guesstimating over the next 2 to 3 years as far as a return to a revenue stream based on not just COVID, but the fact that we are about to also go double dip on another recession.
Yeah, I don't know. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them.
No, I don't. I don't. But I'm asking you because you're putting together the budget. What were the assumptions you made given the fact that this is all happening?
So we made, go ahead, Milton, and go ahead.
I just quickly, Renee, I'm not the chief financial officer here or economist, but I do have some insights. I think we're not making apples to apples comparison because in 2008, it was only an economic downturn. And it's my understanding that Howard County and the state of Maryland was not hit as hard as the rest of the country. Now we're talking about an economic downturn and a pandemic. And so, yes, I want us to see us return to pre-COVID income, but right now we have a double whammy, for lack of a better phrase, as opposed to what we happened in 2008.
Right.
Go ahead, Susan. I mean, what I hear for recreational activities or for hospitality is a 3 to 4 year recovery. So what does that mean to us? You know, hopefully 3 to 4 years. I don't know. We did the budget for next year. We didn't do, you know, looking forward. So, and we have assumptions from industry research and the best we could do with what we expect, you know, people are going to want to be doing for all things, you know, art classes and swimming and everything. So we'll see, you know, we'll see. And I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, Dick and then Ginny.
Okay, first of all, after hearing what Janet had to say, I'm going to withdraw my concern about the Talbot pool. If nobody's using it, the hell with it. So, second thing is, on the Haven, as we're looking at the financials there, I just want to remind people that there are overhead allocations that are now being assigned to the Haven. And they're not going to go away. It's just some other department's going to have to pick up their share of that. So when we look at what the real financial significance of the Haven is, and I'm a little embarrassed defending the Haven because I think it's a bunch of hooey, but financially, let's make sure we're really getting an accurate idea of just what the real numbers are. And the final thing I want to say, I keep hearing Fairway Hills coming up, which of course is in my village. And yeah, we got to do something about Fairway Hills. And I think it's going to take some discussion and some suggestions, but I don't want to find out about it in the Meriwether Post that, you know, CA is going to shut it down or do something else. I have promised my constituents that before we make any decisions about Fairway Hills, they'll be consulted and they'll be brought in on this. And so I really hope that we can make sure that we do consult them. Milton, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want, Dick, I assure you, whatever we plan to do with them, whenever anything or whatever is done with Fairway Hills, you will not read about it in the Meriwether Post. And going back to Nancy's comment, that article, that post, he basically took, if we remember, this was a draft budget. He took what we were sending to the board and the community as a draft budget recommendation from the staff, and then made that big jump that is closing.
Okay, all right. But you've already told the staff, Haven, that it is closing. So, and well,
we're
anyway, let's not beat a dead horse. I just wanted to make sure that we did consult with the community before we went further.
Okay, Ginny?
Yeah, okay, I know Janet's telling us we're running out of time, so this will be a quick question. Follow up to what Renee and Susan have been talking about. What I'm trying to just find out is how much money we really have available, which was my question earlier. So if we have $63 million, $3 million for the finance is a given, right? That has to be in the budget, FY22. The $2 million is cash reserve that the board voted for. So that's $5 million. So does that mean just on those two items, we have really only $58 million available to spend on whatever? Is that it's a very simple way of presenting it, I realize, but is that accurate or not? No, okay, because because we don't have 2 million and 3 million in the FY22 budget. Did I not?
Why don't you let staff try to address that and send us some information?
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I think they need to really sit down and think about it. The one thing I will say, Ginny and Susan and Lynn can correct me, but the $3 million reserve that is required under our agreements is already in place. We already have that. And so we don't need to put any more money into it. The 3 million is already set aside. So it's all done. So it doesn't have to come out of next year's budget or the budget after that. So the 3 million was done this fiscal year 21 and it's over.
Got it. So it's not an every year thing. It's a one-shot deal and it has to be just kept in reserve. The other thing though is the 2 million, and that should be on the list because that will then bring it down to 61 million. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I mean, the reserve fund is the new one we're creating.
Right.
And the staff proposal is 2 million initial, but you know, in the future years, we could add more to it.
Okay, but
I think what the board wants.
I think Renee asked, is that in some sort of a trust or something? It is not, correct? And we could use that if we wanted to do something, open all the pools, do God knows what, you know, I'm just saying we could use that. It's not in a trust. It's not a lockbox. Okay, thanks.
Ginny, you're spending our reserve before we even start.
Well, I don't even see it in the budget, so I don't think we've started. You're right.
Okay, Dan?
I'm having trouble finding it.
Dan?
Yeah, so I just wanted to respond to Dick and some of the others who talked about Fairway Hills. First, it's not a recommendation for this budget because it requires a lot of community discussion. So that was something that was not going to happen. And two, Fairway Hills is currently $450,000 or $350,000 better than last year. Actually, it has a positive increase in net assets at the moment. So they have financially turned it around. Now, whether we can keep that going, I hope we can, but this year has been amazing for them.
Yeah, their parking lot is always full. I noticed when I walk by.
They're actually, you know, free and clear. They're showing an increase in net assets right now. Now we're hitting the middle of winter, so that'll backslide a little bit. But it's, you know, in FY20 they were at negative $320,000. So Fairway Hills is found its stride right now.
As long as we're talking about Fairway Hills, I don't know if you've ever been upstairs in that building, but it's beautiful. And you might get your people thinking about, is there any way that could be used? Right now, it's just kind of storage space, but it's really fascinating up there.
Okay, let's move on to Shari. Shari, followed by Lynn, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, you know, Dan, I'm really happy to hear that there are so many people out golfing because there's nothing else that they could do. And I'm glad that the parking lot is filled. That reminds me that when I've been by Supreme Sports, drove by the other day and there were no more than 25 cars in the parking lot, both upper and lower. I think our other gyms probably have more people there, at least from what I've seen as I've driven by. But I think we have to, people vote with their feet. That's one of the things we used to say in adult education. You can present all kinds of programs, but people actually vote with their feet. And so monitoring these things, I think is really important, and also counting in the costs of maintenance. Every time I think about the replacement of all those bridges, or the same bridge that was replaced many times, that raises the cost of something like the golf course. So I think we have to take that into account because those are ongoing, just like we're talking about fixed costs, those are ongoing costs that will always be there. That's something we need to take into account.
Okay, Lynn, you're up. Lynn, I think you're muted.
Got it. Yep. Just quickly on Fairway Hills. I know for the golf committee, they're all very excited about what's been going on there. And yes, every time I go by, it is full and booming. I think they're also aware because of the high cost of repairs on that part that's basically floodplain, that, you know, there will probably be some changes going forward, but, you know, hopefully they're hoping that there'll be changes related to a golf course. You know,
well, you know, now that Bedminster has lost that PGA tournament, maybe we ought to apply.
All right. Any last questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up because we're just about out of time. Okay. Well, thanks for the budget discussion, and thanks Milton and staff for presenting and answering. Next item on our agenda is Inner Arbor Trust revised concept plan. Is there anything anybody wants to say or ask or?
Yeah,
Dick?
I had expected we were going to get a proposal on, first of all, how CA can help with the new concept plan, and also what implications that was going to have on the easement. Has the Inner Arbor Board prepared any thoughts on how we should proceed?
No, we hadn't done anything. We hadn't really thought that that was what we were supposed to be doing. Per our discussion last time, we were hoping that the board would approve the concept plan just basically as a concept plan, not as an absolute, you must do this. The conversation, as I remember it from the last meeting, got into, oh, it might be real expensive in phases 3 and 4 with stream remediation and water and things like that. I know that Andy had wanted to have some studies done before we decided. My feeling on that is that stages 3 and 4, which we're hoping again would still be CAs. There's no, we've already changed the concept plan from the original one. The concept plan can be changed again as money or as just development changes the land. So, you know, we would still love to have the CA board approve the concept plan.
Okay, is that on our agenda, Andy?
I don't think the easements are all that relevant to the concept plan, right? Because the easements that we're talking about transferring are not covered by what is included in the concept plan. So the Inner Arbor Board, Nina will be setting up time, if she hasn't already, with Sherry to discuss those easements, but those easements are not really related to the concept plan overall, unless, you know, unless someone decides that it's going to go well beyond what is currently under discussion. There's no reason that those easements should impact whether or not we fundamentally agree with the concept plan.
Okay, I guess what we're saying here is the next step is for the board, the CA board, to give its blessing to the new concept plan. I'm just wondering if we had anything more, more comprehensive than that in terms of after we approve this plan, who's going to do what and when? Because I'd love to see this thing move along. Is where I'm coming.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to put numbers to it, but I can tell you that, you know, preliminary estimates make this a very reasonable plan. And so as things recover and there may be more public funding, like from the state, for instance, or potentially from sponsors, you know, it's a very doable plan in a not ridiculous, like, you know, I don't even think we're talking 10 years. Like, I think this is something that would be manageable in a 5-year once it gets started.
Yeah.
you know,
And
until it's phased.
that's what I want to see happen, that
Yeah,
it gets started.
yeah.
And,
I
and I
think
see
in our
Andy's writing
request
this down. Are you putting in there, schedule the approval?
I'm trying to get things down. Dick, what I do suggest is that if you have any specific questions, requests for information, can you put them in an email, send them to me and
Okay.
CC the board so
Okay.
that I got it all and I can make sure. And
I'll
the same
do
thing
that.
for anybody. If anybody else has anything, you know, just put it in an email, send it to me and CC the board. Lynn, anything
Okay,
you want to
just
say here?
one last quickie. Again, for a CA presence downtown, the building that we are planning on building in the park would be an absolutely incredible place for CA to have a presence. So there are certainly alternatives to the Haven as a strong CA presence.
Okay, anything else? If not, we're going to move on to communication strategy. And I'm going to ask Milton if there's anything you'd like to start before he turns it over to Tim.
No, I just want us to keep moving along. And Tim and Danica, I know that you put a lot of time and effort in this. And so, in my humble opinion, it's very impressive. So let's get started.
Tim, Danica, thank you. You're on, Tim.
Thank you. Can you see my my screen okay, the shared screen?
Yes.
Very good. So thanks, Andy, and to all the board for this chance to present and discuss this new communication strategy. I want to make sure I note that a strategy like this doesn't come about without a fair amount of effort. And I should take a moment to thank Danica Ryans and Sam Kasura, both part of the comms team, for their efforts in developing the strategy. And of course, as always, thanks to Milton for his guidance and perspective. I also want to acknowledge several board members, Jessamine, Dick, and Jenny, for the work they did last year prior to Danica and I joining the team. That gave us a foundation and a starting point in the development of this strategy. We're going to use this as our blueprint going forward to build better systems and practices for engaging with the Columbia community in a number of ways. In particular, establishing systematic and enduring mechanisms for hearing from our community in ways that tangibly inform operational, programmatic, and strategic decision-making. And to that end, it's my hope that we can be strong and effective partners with the board in its implementation and improvement. As should be true of all strategies, this one will evolve. And as we learn what tactics and practices give us clarity and make the most impact, we'll build success on success and learn from our mistakes. This is the best plan we can deploy today. Tomorrow's will be better because of what we do with this one. We start where we always start, by clearly articulating what this strategy is meant to do. Our objectives guide our actions and provide a basis for assessing our success. The strategy has 3 objectives. Our first objective is to make a clear connection between our organization and all of the benefits and advantages that are associated with being part of the Columbia community. There are many different reasons that people live here, work here, and visit, and each person, each family, each business has its own unique sense of why Columbia is the place for them to be. For many, these benefits are consciously considered and they're obvious, and for others, it's more subtle. What we know is that Columbia Association plays a significant role in the reality and the manifestation of those benefits. Our community in general has a quality of life as good as it is possible to have, and we are in the quality of life business. Now, we do not and we will not claim that CA is responsible for every good thing available to the community, but we can justifiably align ourselves with those good things and generally make a strong case for the value that CA brings in making them a reality. Our plan works to create cognitive and subconscious associations between CA and the benefits of being part of the Columbia community. And in doing so, presents this organization as a strong and positive part of our stakeholders' quality of life. The second objective is to put in place a way of truly understanding where the community is and how it feels about this organization. We are naturally responsive to the loudest and most insistent voices that we hear, and negative opinions and experiences are shared far more frequently than positive. We're continuously at risk of perceiving our organization to be vilified and disliked, and we want to chase down and respond to every slight that's vocalized. And as we've seen in recent times, someone with an agenda can stir up a small group of loud voices and make it appear to be a groundswell against us based on our automatic interpretation of any group being inherently representative of the community as a whole. This is not to say that we should proceed on the assumption that we are well liked and appreciated. The point is to not have to guess and not to extrapolate from small and unrepresentative samples. Our community isn't going to go out of its way to help us in this. It takes time and effort to voice an opinion, and frankly, most people have better things to do. We have to be deliberate. We have to be prepared to make the investment required to take the pulse of our stakeholders scientifically. Our objective is to establish consistent structural and procedural mechanisms that give us the insight that we need and that we can base decisions on with confidence and consistency. The third objective of the strategy is to prepare ourselves and dedicate appropriate resources to respond to issues and situations that need it. This is, by definition, the unpredictable part of our job. But by having a set of principles that we can adhere to and a playbook that we can turn to for some level of guidance, we'll meet situations as they arise without panic, with consistency, and with coordination. This is what our strategy is intended to achieve. So let's take a look at how we're planning on doing it. There are 5 components to this strategy, each playing its own part in helping us achieve our objectives. We start with message campaigns, which are the bread and butter of our content, and we produce this on a day-to-day basis and push it out to our audiences. We'll be very deliberate about the messages and the processes that we use to create and deploy them. As I stated before, it's our objective to align CA with the reasons that the Columbia community is a great place to be. There are many such reasons, and everyone has their own. But we can identify several that we know are commonly held and valued, and the more we continue to learn about the sentiment and priorities as expressed by the community, the more we can be confident that we're reflecting those reasons held by the most people. So we begin with 4 reasons that we believe would be on most people's list. It's a great place to raise a family. We have wonderful natural and green areas. We have a strong commitment to health and wellness for all. We have a diverse and thriving arts, culture, and entertainment community, albeit somewhat impacted right now by COVID restrictions. These are just some of the reasons that people want to be here and enjoy a quality of life better than they would have anywhere else. So we expect to have message campaigns underway and manage for perhaps 3 to 5 of these reasons at any given time. And we've started with these 4. Though they may be swapped out for the sake of maintaining freshness of content, connecting with the broadest possible audience over the long term. So what does it mean to implement a message campaign? It means having a content plan for each. Content may be original and created by ourselves, or it may be information and material provided by others and highlighted or amplified by CA. More and more, this is distributed through digital channels, but we'll rely on all methods available to us to push the content we want to our audiences to see in a way that continuously reinforces this connection between CA and the benefits of being part of the Columbia community. It means working with selected partners that make sense around a given reason, perhaps the county school system, healthcare providers, community nonprofits, or the restaurant association. We'll share our audiences and connect with them in ways that showcase and highlight the things that reinforce those reasons together. It means having a deliberate and targeted media plan in which we make the story pitches, we offer content, we guide the attention of blogs, newspapers, magazine, television, and radio organizations to great stories about how these reasons manifest and, where possible, how CA makes it possible. The next component of the plan is something we're calling the Community Engagement Campaign. It's a fairly generic sounding name for something that we believe will be very powerful. And while we may come up with a better name for it in time, and I understand it's been done to some extent in the past, it's intended to provide us with the pulse of the community now and into the future. We're proposing a twice-yearly survey, fairly narrow in focus, but wide in coverage. We're still in very early stages of scoping this out, but we estimate a goal of collecting around 500 to 1,000 responses during each campaign, which we've loosely penciled in for April and October each year, based on some initial thoughts on how it would interact with school calendars, holidays, and our own budget preparation cycles. That's still up in the air, as is the question of whether we would have the ability to pull it together for this April or need to wait till October to the first rollout. The key value of this campaign is its longitudinal nature, which means that it's a consistent and repeated survey drawing on a representative sample of the community across geographic, demographic, and other characteristics, so that we as an organization would have a deep understanding of the trends over time. Right now, we're consulting with some third-party organizations that manage these kinds of survey processes for municipalities and nonprofits to understand pricing and procedures. We believe there's great value in having an independent party implement the survey and would look to provide as much transparency as the data allows in reporting these results publicly. There would be deeper analytics available as inputs for program and board decision-making, with the confidence it comes with having dependable and sound data from a representative cross-section of our stakeholders. So let's switch to response communications. How do you plan to respond to the unexpected and unanticipated? That's, of course, the fundamental challenge of creating a strategy under the response communications banner. I don't need to talk too much about the tension that can arise when we, as representatives of an organization that we love and value, feel like it's under attack or takes hits to its reputation and value. And I want to make crystal clear that my mission and my priority is to defend this reputation in the long term, build our brand value in an enduring way. And in the middle of a crisis, our instinct is to do something, to say something, to let no slight go by. We know we're right. And if we could just sit everyone down and explain exactly what the truth is, then everyone would love us and respect us and support us. Of course, that isn't an option available to us. And we need to work within the reality of the public relations realm. So if we can't plan for every eventuality, we need to know what our principles and general approach are, and then provide the support to those who we have selected as being the voice of the organization. Let's look at those principles. First, perspective. Above all, our objective is to maintain CA's long-term brand and reputation so that we can be what we need to be and do what we need to do over the long haul. There will always be individuals that vocally and strenuously disagree and criticize us. It cannot be our goal that every person in the community has a positive view of CA. We've been around for over half a century, and we need to keep our eyes on the long-term view. Accuracy. Trust is the cornerstone of reputation, and we will always be careful to address issues with the facts on our side and a minimum of spin. That said, it's just as important to ensure that misinformation is contained, and we should be bold in speaking out where we can do so with robust and clear facts. Speed. While acknowledging the importance of taking an appropriate long-term view, in situations where a response campaign is warranted, our communications efforts need to move as quickly as possible to maintain relevance and impact. Objectivity. We represent and serve all stakeholders and all diverse members of our community. No small group of connected individuals should have greater access or louder voice than others. Tact. We keep our powder dry and remember that our voice is louder than most in the community. We should not fight with our community, but on behalf of them. And we should be intentional and patient when it comes to addressing anger, misconceptions, harsh criticisms, and nasty comments. And finally, confidence. CA provides enormous value to the Columbia community, and criticisms that arise in the public space have to be considered in light of the massive positive contribution that we have made to the health and wellness and general quality of life for so many. We need to own this and avoid a posture of defensiveness. Columbia is what it is in large part because of what Columbia Association provides and represents. These are our touchstone response communications principles that can provide us with direction and guardrails when we're dealing with changing, rapid, and uncertain situations. No two situations that require a response are the same, and it doesn't make sense to use a sledgehammer to hang a picture hook. So we do what we can do to categorize and prepare the level and scope of our response to what it warrants. It's a somewhat imperfect system, but it's a workable method to help guide us. So for example, level 1, perhaps we see someone complaining about a bad customer service situation involving CA in the comments section of a prominent local blog. Others pile on. We know that the situation is unlikely to be as bad as it's made out to be. Since these comments weren't directed at us, we let them be. Perhaps we have internal discussions to determine if there's a problem we can rectify, but this is not a time to insert ourselves into a discussion between residents. Level 2, a disagreement breaks out on our own Facebook page about the need to wear masks indoors, with personal attacks between individuals and strong criticisms of CA policies and enforcement practices growing. A clear statement from CA addressing the situation is warranted to clarify our position and reinforce our requirements. Level 3. This is completely hypothetical, but accusations of discrimination or embezzlement or theft are made against a CA employee in the press. This would rise to the level of a strong and sustained response management, prioritizing fact and transparency throughout. All of these are examples. These are supposed to be guides to what we would do in these different situations. And beyond this, we recognize that there are situations that emerge that are fundamentally more sustained and to some extent more predictable, but don't align with the message campaigns we previously described. In cases where it's warranted, we'll develop and deploy a communications campaign which may be partially proactive and partially responsive according to the characteristics of the particular situation. We'll look to formalize a more templated version of this approach as a next step in this strategy, but we've so far identified the following 4 situations that have some version of such a campaign in development or deployment as we speak: COVID-19, this current budget process, the Symphony of Lights situation, and the new president CEO search. Columbia Voices is the name we're giving to the conversation that we're looking to have with our community. It is a deliberate, structured approach to meeting people where they are and both seeking their views on a range of topics that we propose and inviting their views and input on anything that's important to them. One of the principles that we're looking to build into Columbia Voices is to meet people where they are, quite literally. And I'm in the process of planning an outreach team model that takes us into the community with materials, knowledgeable representatives, and perhaps most importantly, donuts and coffee to help create connections, answer questions, and listen and listen and listen. This could take place in village centres, at soccer tournaments, in shopping centres or local parks and events. Obviously, this remains subject to COVID precautions in the short term. A lot of Columbia Voices will also take place online, and we'll make use of our social media and email channels to seed conversations around certain topics. This could include things like local housing and development, aging in place, childhood health and safety, economic development, business attraction, environmental stewardship, and a lot more. We anticipate managing a topic like this over the course of perhaps a month at a time, providing opportunities to complete polls and surveys, participate in focus groups, and encouraging as much commentary and conversation as possible, channeling that to the appropriate part of our organisation who can take some action or make an educated contribution to that conversation. Some topics will be closely related to CA's programs and responsibilities, and others less so. In addition, we're aiming to increase the awareness of and participation in things like resident speak out at our regular board meetings. And we'll be doing a lot of work to give people some attention on the election season coming up in a few months to encourage participation there. Finally, the fifth component of our strategy is made up of the communications that are not easily categorized, but cover what's happening that's interesting and important in our community. We want to raise awareness of the good things that are happening all around us and make it clear that we value and celebrate the day-to-day stuff that makes our community great. We'll share, we'll retweet, we'll comment, we'll celebrate and make announcements, and where we can, we'll be somewhat playful and humorous, and we'll connect. This requires us to keep our eyes open, watching daily for interesting stories. I'll note that this is not a mechanism for anyone to require us to shine our spotlight on them or their pet project. We retain full discretion around the things we highlight, but we welcome all suggestions, and especially from this group and the village representatives to help us discover things we wouldn't otherwise stumble across. We will, of course, seek to highlight content that aligns with the values of our organisation and which contribute positively to the public discourse. So that's the approach, that's the structure. And we return for a moment to the stated objectives that we believe will be achieved through this plan. I've spoken for maybe a good 10 to 12 minutes, but would welcome further comments and questions from the board with the time we have available tonight. And of course, you all know how to get in touch with me to talk further one-on-one. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Dick, you're up next.
Well, I think this is an incredible job, Tim, and you and Danica really did a wonderful thing here. I'm glad to see it. This is something I've been looking for years, and I think you've pretty much covered the key considerations. I've got a few things, just nits that I want to suggest that you might want to think about. I think Columbia is more than a nice place to be. I'd like to have something a little more muscular statement there. This is the greatest place on earth, but it's a place to live, to work, to play, and just being here it's just a fraction of what it's all about. And it's also for people who who don't live here, who do work here. It's people in the surrounding county too. So let's focus on that. And the other thing that you never mentioned is we have quite a heritage. I mean, we are we're a highly influential planned community, and the Rouse story is still inspiring today. It's still taught today in city planning circles. So there's still a lot of people who strongly believe in the Rouse principles. I wish you had some reference to that in there. You mentioned it's a nice place to raise a family, and that is a really good attribute. But it's not just that. I mean, it's a great place to be retired, and it's a good place to start a career. It's a great location. I mean, there's just a lot going for it, more than it's a good place to be. The other thing is, I would have liked to seen a little more emphasis on getting people involved. That's one of our 5-year plan objectives, and we also there's a role for advocacy, which is also in our 5-year plan that I'd love to see mentioned. And what might be helpful to help us focus is some kind of a positioning statement, just saying what we are and perhaps why. I love Milton's statement, we're in the quality of life business, but some kind of a position that really says what we are that's different than any other place in the world, basically, and what makes us special. There's a mention in there, and I agree with you. We can't go full bore onto everybody who has some tiny issue, but a lot of those tiny issues do grow, and they have to be identified. And there's squeaky wheels in this community that need to be oiled. And I think the most important thing is people need to believe that we care, that we really understand, that we're interested, and a lot of active listening is part of the communications process. And we need to anticipate too. One of the things I make a note here, you and Danica should really have a seat at the table when decisions are being made that could have communications implications. Sometimes something will come up and it'll seem like a great way to do business, but you're gonna say, well, whoa, if we do that, we better prepare people for that. We better have some scripts ready. We better have some answers, Q&A put together. So I think it's important that our communications people are very, very involved in all aspects of decision making. For example, I said on catching some of this stuff before it gets out of hand. When this whole Symphony of Lights thing came up, we really needed to have a communications plan on that before everything hit the fan. I put together an email that I sent. I got a lot of emails on it, and I put together a little email and I shared that with the board. I think Nancy used it too. And I don't know how many minds it changed, but at least it told people that we were aware of it, that we were concerned, that a lot of thought had gone into this, that there are other issues that hadn't been brought up. And so sometimes you put out those little fires before they burn out of control. And it could be just a light touch. It could be just a suggested email that goes out from a board member, or it could be something you send out, or getting in touch with the local papers or whatever. Let's see. And
can you wrap it up?
Okay, I'm on my last couple of lines here, and actually that's it. One final thing is sometimes the community is not prepared for changes, and we are a dynamic community, and one of the things that makes us special is we are a complete city, and cities grow and develop, and that should be part of our message. And I'll just sit back and see what else is.
Thank you. Very comprehensive.
Okay.
Alan?
Dick is the expert on the thing, so I'm going to yield to his expertise. Try not to repeat what he said. I was a little concerned. So overall, I thought it was great. If it all came out the way your speech made it sound, this could be wonderful. I was also impressed with, if you were speaking from a script, it didn't sound like you were speaking from a script. If you were speaking ad hoc, it sounded like you were speaking from a script. So I don't know how you. So again, these are some nips, not fundamental problems. I don't think surveys equal engagement. So you spend a lot of time talking about engaging the public in twice-a-year surveys. That feels like engagement to me. So there needs to be something different for me. I also wanted to see more tie-ins to the strategic I love the strategic tie-ins, at least the intent of them with the budget. I think that needs to happen here, and that's the values of Columbia where the strategic plan was based on. It's not just, we're not here to the Columbia community. So we're not here to just align with the great reasons why it's a place to be. We're here because we have some values. We're here because we have some 5-year strategic plans. Those things need to be tied into this. I'm just curious, and I guess maybe it's show how old I am. In the past, we used to have members of the local press show up at board meetings and things, and zero mention of any kind of whatever passes for local press now. So I'm curious about whether there's any use, whether it's Columbia Patch or whatever, some use of engaging with those outlets and using them as part of our strategy. And the biggest thing that was left out for me is us. You mentioned us once as a board, but maybe you don't know, we get elected to a position called the Columbia Council, and our specific purpose is to be basically liaisons to our villages. And that wasn't mentioned at all. So what you presented was a great corporate plan, if you will, around CA management, you all being part of it, taking control of CA messaging. There was very little in there about using the board being both agents of CA fiduciary responsibility, but also agents of our villages and agents of ourselves and our role in the process of communication with our villages, with making sure our villages' voice gets back to CA, etc.
Okay.
Those are my comments.
Thank you, Alan. I would very much appreciate if we can take that point offline. I think there's some substantial meat we can put on that bone. Perhaps it's just the few months I've spent here and I haven't got my head around everything like those nuances. And if you and I could just chat about that more over the coming week, I'd be really delighted to see how we can supercharge those things by tapping into that particular aspect of the board village relationship.
Anytime.
So thank you.
Any other questions for Tim? No? All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it. Good strategy.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Great job.
Okay. We're going to move on. We added the topic of management contract 15 minutes. Nancy, this was your topic you wanted to add. Nancy, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to just talk a little bit about it, just to mention that as CA has discovered going through this pandemic crisis and so on, that they need to have a reserve for the first time in a long time, or if ever. The villages, as you are, I'm sure, well aware, are going through a very similar crisis where they're no longer able to rent out their facilities for the most part because people are not coming together. So they also want to be able to build up their reserves in case of a crisis such as this, God forbid, ever again. So I just wanted to bring that up to show the similarity in circumstances. CA certainly is on a much larger scale, but the villages are very much in need of support. And I think that to give them another year of allowing them to build some reserves without having to return it to CA would certainly go a long way to strengthen the relationships as well with the villages. And that's it. Thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, well, along that vein, we as a board and as management have received a number of letters from villages. I'd like to ask management, what's our response?
Milton?
Yes, Alan, we have received those letters, and Jackie has been working very closely with the village managers and during this budget deliberation process, we're going to be coming to the board because we do have the numbers and information on the village managers, their second quarter 21 financials. and we want the board to see that as we get these letters from the villages, because I'm not going to say what those amounts are, but the villages have some reserves, and I can't say they're equally spread across all 10, but I would like for the board to see those numbers in the upcoming work session.
I appreciate that, and we made a decision to get rid of whatever we called that slush fund, contingency fund, which in a sense served as reserves for all the villages, and in that process out so that villages had reserves. And I would just want to put people on notice that I meant what I wrote earlier, that we need to fundamentally rethink how we think about the money that, and I as I said in my message, understand this point from a legal point of view, but if that means we need to shift in how things are done, we need to shift in how things are done, because fair is fair, and fundamentally, money that we're getting that goes to the villages belongs to the villages, not to us.
Renee? Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, me.
Oh, Janet. Okay.
I just wanted to point out that villages are damned if they do and damned if they don't, because needless to say, they have curtailed spending considerably. So if their numbers look good, it's simply because they're trying to spend as little as possible. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's what you're implying, Milton, but if it is, all I'm saying is if the villages are trying to be responsible, let's support them in being responsible. The same way we're supporting CA having more of a buffer if something like this ever happened in the future. And I don't think this request is for an ongoing reserve fund elimination, but at the very least, you know, the villages are still impacted by what's been happening, and they will continue to be impacted, and some more than others based on the amount that we've decided that has been proposed to eliminate from what they received from CA this year. So I'd like us all to keep that in mind and support the villages being fiscally responsible, as opposed to encouraging them to go out and spend everything so they don't have to send it back to CA.
Anyone else? Alan?
Yeah.
Back in?
I just want the timeline on this in terms of, Milton, you said we'd talk about it with the budget. When does a decision on this have to be made?
Well, as I said, Alan, we have several. I will work with our calendars. I think we have a number of more budget work sessions and discussions coming up before the board makes a decision. As I said, I'm not making a value judgment about it. I just want the board to have that information in front of them before you make that decision, because it's just part of your decision making, because we do, and the villages share with us their financials, and we work very closely with them. So I would like the board to see that information, and then you can make the decision whatever the board chooses to.
All that, Milton, but that doesn't answer my question about when is, you know, it's like when will we have to make a decision before the villages would have to kick in whatever, you know, the formula is to return.
Oh, Alan, that doesn't go into effect until the end of the fiscal year.
Yes.
And the fourth quarter reports won't be due until I think July or something. So yeah, we just have to make the decision before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing, if I may, Andy.
Yeah.
I think as I said, I need to work with Jackie to find out when those numbers are final. But I think in February, like something like right off the top of my head, we have a February 18th or something work session. I'll work with you and Jenny to find a time when we can put it on an agenda so we can come to you with that information.
Right. We'll work. We'll get it on the agenda. All right. Anything else? If not, let's move on then to applicable state legislation. You have the memo, and so what we want to know is, are there any questions regarding state legislation?
I guess also, I would ask, is there anything that you would like for us, based on that list, to explain to you?
Anyone? No? All right, we'll move on. Thank you. Development tracker. Jessica or Kristen?
I'm here, but I think Jessica is here as well. And it was our understanding that we would, rather than our traditional presentation to you, we would just take some questions if anybody had them based on the paperwork that was submitted in your packages.
Right. So are there any questions regarding the most recent development tracker? I do have one. How did things go with the zoning board hearings for both the Hickory Ridge and Limestone at Erickson at Limestone? The never-ending cases.
Right. I mean, they're both interminable, right?
The never-ending cases are continuing to not end. So we are still in, I believe, opposition testimony in Hickory Ridge, if I'm correct, Kristen, and I believe that Erickson is also in opposition testimony. And there's no ability for us to track how many people are signed up for opposition, but my understanding is now that both petitioners' cases are closed, more people cannot sign up. So it's only those people who signed up before the petitioner case was closed. But I think it's close to 90 people in Erickson, so I think it might take a while.
It was 90 because they said, well, if there are 90 people and then 90 people want to question each person, it's whatever that mathematical huge number is.
All right.
Andy?
Jenny, you have a question?
Yeah, what hearings, how many hearings have we had on Hickory Ridge? 22 or something?
No, I think we're still at least more than 10, less than 20. So
really only oh, I thought it was closer to the 20. Erickson, my prediction is it'll be over in the next 2 hearings max. Okay, you want to bet on that, guys? Okay.
No betting. We do not do betting at the meeting.
But I'm donating money to a favorite charity. I'm kidding.
We're anticipating, just so you guys know, we're anticipating a similar time frame for Hickory Ridge. Like you said, the opposition testimony is what's happening now, but it's the individuals. And from what we understand, a lot of people signed up, but there are some people who at this point have chosen not to actually get up and testify because they feel like everything that they wanted to say has kind of been said by somebody else. So we are hopeful. They were saying they thought the village board thought one more meeting. I think it's 2 or 3. But
well, there's also another problem with the system they're using. A lot of people are having trouble loading it onto their old computers or visual, auditory problems. So they can't really participate, is what I'm hearing from X number of people, and especially on a case that deals with seniors. So that's an issue where you're going to have fewer people than if you had the old way of doing things. Okay.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, we're on to capital projects, open space updates. Dennis, you ready for questions?
Well, actually, I have an answer before you have a question.
Sure.
So on the ash tree slide, we took down 118 ash trees in Long Reach, and we're getting ready to roll out a program that I wish I could say was my idea, but Owen Brown came to us and asked if they could spend some money on tree reforestation. And we think that's a great idea, and we'll find some volunteers, Owen Brown will pay for the trees, and we'd like to roll that program out to all 10 villages. And if we do 100 trees in all 10, that's 1,000 trees that could go in this year. So CA, it's a great way to leverage CA open space and the experience we have to get volunteers out. We can work with the village. I think it's a great way for us all to work together. And I wish it was my idea. It was Owen Brown first, and then Jan Clark, our landscape architect, thought of it. But I think it's a great program. The other slide is about the SHA work that's going on. And I would just say that it is a mess right now. And we recognize that that area is many people's backyards. It's their property, but it's their backyard, has always felt like their backyard. And so we're spending, John McCoy has probably spent just this week 10 hours out in the field meeting with residents. We're working with Tim and Danica on better communication. But as soon as as soon as the weather warms up and it gets warm, we're going to put I think 1,000 trees back in 8.3 acres, and that's just trees. That's not shrubs, and that's going to green up really fast. The canopy's been pulled back. It's a very wet and moist area. There's a lot of water back there. So 6 months from now, that will look completely different. But I do recognize, and open space does recognize, that is someone's backyard to many people, and it's a big disruption. There's no way you can not say that. Other than that,
and you better make sure they get their owls back.
we're importing owls. Maybe owls, but we're bringing them in. But no, those are the only two slides I wanted to talk about.
Dennis, one thing I'd like to say, I have gotten some great compliments for you on your countertop at Linden Hall. Everybody loves it.
All right, Janet, and then Alan. Janet?
Dennis, I was curious, have those ash trees already been removed from Kendall Ridge, or they're going to be?
They are in progress.
Okay.
So these were, and you might not even know it if you weren't out there when they were removed. There's some groups of like 8, but most of them are individual.
Okay, and they're just, are they felled and left, or are they removed?
So it's a combination. Some of them are taken out, and there's something called a snag. Are you familiar with that term? So a snag is, so in the SHA project, we left a snag in where an owl was nesting in the snag.
Okay.
And a snag is a tree that's cut off like 15 feet high. And it's a great habitat, and the owl in Harper's Choice is in that snag.
Would it be possible for us to get a blurb or something to put on the Longreach website, so that, because I know that before, when some were done around the Locust Park area, residents have reached out to me saying, hey, what's going on? It looks like something went through here. And, you know, just, I think it's good for educational purposes to, you know, just have something available, either if folks at the village center get any calls about it, or just if someone's on our website and said, oh, that's what's going on.
So I think that's a great idea. And open space, someone on the open space team is meeting with the village managers every month in that meeting. And putting together, Susan Smith created a newsletter for River Hill with just open space updates. And we're trying to roll that out to the other 9 villages as well.
Okay.
Pushing that information out from open space. But yes, we can get that blurb out.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Alan?
Dennis,
Alan?
I mean, Dennis, you know that I have enormous respect for you, for John, for the work you all do, for your responsiveness when I take walks and I see something and I tell you a picture and you're right on it. My question in this case is, what, besides generalities, we got to do better? What did we learn from this whole stream?
So what's going to happen differently? And the Long Reach Village Board is supporting the project. It's a WSSI project in that village. And what made the Harper's Choice project more difficult that we didn't appreciate was, in Long Reach, there's a pathway along the entire project. And so the access area, so that reduces the disturbance to the stream channel, by virtue of the fact that you can move equipment in and out on that pathway. When I looked at the plan, I knew, I can look at a plan, I can look at a blueprint, and I can tell you, I know exactly what's going to happen. But that didn't get out. That wasn't, I think that most residents just don't see it the same way someone who works in construction see it. And so what I learned in Long Reach, we're going to have walks in every section where work is going to take place. We're going to make sure we point out every tree. That one's going to be a little easier anyway because the pathway is right there. But so if you ask what lessons I learned, is probably even, there's not, you can't have too much communication. And just because I understand it, it doesn't mean everyone else does.
Thank you.
Shari.
Yeah, I just want to say also that the Watershed Advisory Committee talked about this at our last meeting, and we hope that the people on that advisory committee will also be pushing this out to the villages, that when there's this kind of big project, and we talked with John McCoy about this, that there'll be an opportunity for the villages and for the residents to actually walk to whatever that, project is going to be, particularly when it's watershed, and see what is likely to take place there, because a lot of this is really boots on the ground. Once you see it and you're with the CA people, then you have a greater understanding. So please use the Watershed Advisory Committee group with a representative from each from each village as help in doing this and pushing out that message.
Absolutely, thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Dennis, I just wanted to say the dredging at Lake Elkhorn continues, and it's going well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're on now. Chairman's remarks. Any questions? I just want to remind everyone, next Thursday is the virtual town hall event, so don't forget that. Monica, are you still here? Monica, anything you want to say about the presidential search? No. There'll be some information coming out shortly. We're trying to finalize dates, and we'll let you know so you can put them on your calendar and things like that. President's remarks, Milton? Anything you want to add?
Everyone, be safe. It's still very bad out there.
Milton?
Yes.
Are we getting responses for the virtual town hall meeting, questions, concerns from the public?
The last time I checked with Danica, yeah, I can't tell you specifically the number, but yes, we do. And also, last time I checked, well, Tim is there. Tim?
We have around about 150 registrants so far.
Okay, great.
Continuing to grow. We've got a whole, Danica might be able to speak to some of the questions that are coming in. They are aggregating around certain topics. Danica, you got anything to touch on there?
No, a couple dozen questions. A lot of people just are anticipating, even wrote in to express they were excited to just listen and be a part of that information session. But certainly some questions, I think, as you can expect, some questions about the neighborhood pools, aggregating some pathway, kind of more general questions about pathways, as well as some particular programs. So I am working with the senior leadership. I'm checking those as often as I can to make sure that they are prepared to answer those questions once next Thursday comes around.
Okay. Well, when I'm getting emails, I've been sending them on to Milton and appropriate.
That's very helpful.
You guys,
Yep.
you guys, so that you get the categories. But I guess also at Resident Speak Out, like tonight, were you guys recording some of those issues so that you fit that into a category?
Certainly I take notes almost every meeting, or just, make sure that I'm keeping track of that. But it would be extremely helpful, for those individuals. I have a tendency to give preference to those who made the effort to go and sign up if they could to this particular event. So I'm going to keep operating under that assumption. And again, a lot of the issues that have come up in Resident Speak Out reflect a lot of the things that have been brought up in these questions anyway. So hopefully we'll be able to get around to everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Andy, I've still been
Monica,
here.
I see you're back. So, Monica.
Yeah, I've been here the whole time, but I hit the wrong button. So, yes, I'm back. And what was your question? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I just told folks that we'll be sending out some dates for them soon to kind of put on their calendars.
Okay.
in regard to the presidential search, and there'll be more information coming out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, proposed new topics, anything? All right, I want to thank everyone. It's 9:45, so we did really well tonight. And I'd like to adjourn the meeting then. Thank you very much. Enjoy. See you at the virtual town meeting. And in 2 weeks, we have our regular January meeting.
Okay.
Good evening.
All
Good
right.
night.